How the heck are you?
I'm good, sir. I'm good.
All
And
right.
how are you?
Well, if I was doing any better, it'd be illegal. So, all right. So listen, I don't know if you've been able to see any of the shows that I've done thus far on the dialogues. So I'll just tell you that one of my reasons for doing it is, hang on, let me move this around. Let me move stuff around on my screen here. One of my reasons for doing this is because there are so many of us out there in the Jeet Kune Do world with all these different backgrounds, all these different origin stories, but we have this thing that in common.
Yes.
You know, so for example, here was the script for my planned introduction of you, right? Right. It says let's see, my guest today is a guy who has done something that an increasing number of JKD instructors have also achieved, and that is professional success, right?
Yes, sir.
And then it says, I'm always fascinated to hear the stories of those in the JKD clan who have achieved that degree of success, because I think that they have certainly bucked the traditional trend in Jeet Kune Do, right?
Yes. Yes.
So here's where it gets funny. It says, I've known Harley for a number of years, so I'm going to start by spouting off what I think is right about him, and he'll correct what I get wrong, and that's how we'll get the show underway.
Okay, that sounds fun.
All right, so listen to this. Here's as much as I know. Your Jeet Kune Do journey started in Tulsa, Oklahoma, where you were a protege of the late, great JKD pioneer, Terry Gibson.
Yes, that's correct.
And that's where you began to acquire your martial art business acumen.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, that's it. That's it. Right? So now there's a huge blank, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
For most of the world, really. Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah.
Okay. So there's a huge blank that we now have to fill in. So before Gibson's martial arts, was there martial art training, or is that where you started?
No, there was martial arts training. I started, as a very young teenager, like most people, and I studied under a couple of back then PKA world champions.
Okay.
Yeah, so training was a lot of calisthenics to get in better shape, and then lots of big, sweaty 16-ounce boxing gloves and sparring, full contact. And then I got introduced to a guy named Monty Atchley, who taught an Okinawan Kempo system and a Chinese Kung Fu system, and he had actually studied with Gary Dill. And
okay.
So that was kind of my introduction to, like, hey, this is what Jeet Kune Do is. And so I was already a black belt under him in a couple of different systems that he taught. And then I met Mr. Gibson at a Sifu Francis Fong seminar in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And so I met them both at the same time. So, yeah.
That's how that started.
Yeah.
So how long were you with Terry Gibson? Can you remember?
Well, from 1980, I would say I started really in 1988, even though that's when I first met him. I didn't move there until 90, 91, but I was on the phone with him. And
wait. Hold on a second. Where were you? You weren't in Oklahoma?
No, I was in Arkansas. I was 4 hours away. Yeah.
Okay.
And, yeah, so, and, I was like everybody else. I was trying to make martial arts schools. I was dirt broke and, just couldn't make things happen. And Terry had the martial arts that I was looking for. And so, and he was kind enough to answer the phone when I would call and welcome me to their events. And his school had really just kind of come into its own at that point too. So, that was, I would save up money and go, take 2 hours worth of private lessons, and then he would let me hang out for the evening and join evening classes, and then I would drive home and then work my butt off for a month on that material, and then drive back and videotaped
Right.
the private lessons, and just did that back and forth until around 90, 91 when he actually, I had lost my job, and he said, well, just come stay with me and Kathy for a week. And so I stayed in their guest bedroom, and we trained all week, private lessons and classes. And at the end of the week, he offered me a job. So that was it.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a great story. But see, as you were saying that, like when you talked about saving up money and then going back out there, that reminds me of Cass Magda, for example, who did something similar in Canada until he moved to LA.
Right.
You know what I mean? Right. And then the whole being invited to stay and after the private lessons and do the group classes.
Right.
Sifu Dan does that with people all the time.
Yes.
You know? So I just think it's so cool. And to me, it's so fascinating that all of us so-called different people have these similar stories, or aspects of our stories are so similar, right? Okay, so now he offered you a job. What was your title?
I was a program director, which was really kind of a new thing in martial arts business.
Right. Yeah.
Program director. Nobody really. So really, it was like you do everything that we're not going to do. So I answered the phones. I swept the floor. I taught classes. When he brought me in, he had a ranked curriculum with colored, I think it's colored shirts at the time instead of belts. And
no, it wasn't. You know what it was? It was the ink on the T-shirt that changed color.
Yeah. That's probably
Am
right.
I right?
Yeah, probably right.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, so I came in. He made me a red sash, which there were 3 other guys getting ready for their black belt or their instructor test under him. And Mr. Gibson had a great formula that I still use today, and that was, once you become an instructor under me, I'll recommend you to be apprentice under Guru Dan.
Right.
But not until you've achieved that goal and I know who you are and know what kind of character you have.
Right.
So and that was a long-term goal of mine. But so anyway, I got in there about red sash. Good hard year of training, and tested with those guys. And 3 of us made it. One of them got delayed, and then got my recommendation to Guru and became an instructor at that point. So
okay, you mentioned Terry Gibson's curriculum. He was nice enough because I came out to Tulsa twice.
Oh yeah.
I think the first time was in '89. And then maybe 90 or 91. But Terry was nice enough to share when I went full time.
Right.
He shared that curriculum.
Yeah.
Right. With me. Now, let me tell you, there is one adjective to describe that curriculum: extensive.
Yes.
It was right. And the funny thing was, I based my early curriculum, and this is a debt that I will always owe him. I based my early curriculum on his.
Sure.
Until one day, so at one point, all the staff members of one of Miami's top Taekwondo schools trained with me in my morning classes. So they trained Junfan Monday morning, Muay Thai Wednesday morning, and Kali Friday morning. And then they'd go back to their school and they'd teach my stuff at their Taekwondo school and then call me and tell me how much the kids are enjoying it.
Yes.
But then one time they shared their Taekwondo curriculum with me. Right. And I compared and contrasted it to our curriculum.
Right.
And then I forget who it was, because this was 1995. We were all examining what the professional martial art business coaches were doing.
Right.
And I remember maybe it was John Graydon or one of those guys. And he said, whatever it is that you have as a curriculum, cut it in half. You're teaching too much.
Yeah.
So when I looked at their Taekwondo curriculum, which was like this.
Yes. Yes.
Versus ours, which was like this. And I thought, these guys cut this in half.
Yes.
That's when I really started whittling down. So you said that you still have that curriculum, but over the years, have you modified, adjusted, adapted anything different?
Yeah, of course. I still use Terry's formula for how he did it. Like,
Okay.
I remember me and him and Kathy, and we wrote everything that we felt like someone should know from white belt to black belt, and in Kali, and we wrote it all out, and we all three compared and things like that. And you look at the curriculum and you go, well, these two drills are redundant. We don't need both of those. There's a huge gap here. You can't do this without having a little drill here before that.
Right.
Because we did that whole thing from A to Z in Kali, whole thing A to Z in Muay Thai, in Silat, and in JKD.
Mm-hmm.
And then broke them into levels, and then broke them down into stripes and that sort of thing. And that, it is, like you said, comprehensive.
Yeah.
So over the last 20 years here at my academy in Texas, I've rewritten the curriculum several times, added stuff, taken stuff away. The blessing and the curse of being with Inasano, is that there is no written standard, right? There is no, you need to know these three things. And so instructors are left, which I think is good and bad, to write their own curriculum. And you really end up writing a curriculum of material that you're good at, and you kind of avoid the curriculum you're not good at. And so, that's the curse. I mean, even C. Joe Lee said the hardest thing to do is protect your students from yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so your curriculum is a direct reflection of that. So over the years, I've tried to update the curriculum so that my students have a good solid base of fundamentals that they can perform.
Yeah.
And when they see Guru Dan, they're still in touch enough with what he's doing so that if he asked for the Bursalat Buas, that they can perform those, or Contra Sombrado, Punya Sombrado, and Hubit, with disarms, that they can still perform that level of material, so that eventually they can become instructors under him. But at the same time, still have those fundamentals. And I think you got to constantly be adapting, because Guru Dan is.
Yeah. Well, okay. So you were the first person in I don't know how many years that I've just been doing these dialogue shows for maybe about 3 months now. But so outside of that, you're the first person who has mentioned Bursalat Buas. Right. Now, here's the funny thing. I have that stuff in my notebook from 1989.
Yes.
Right. I have that stuff. Now, I don't know where the notebook is. It might be in storage. It might have been destroyed or something. But I remember that stuff. So why the curriculum? Here's what I noticed. Right. It says Filipino Kali. It says Bruce Lee's Jeet Kune Do. It says Muay Thai, and it says Indonesian Silat. So I'm going to ask you a funny question. How come there's no Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu?
I don't like it.
Okay, well, listen. Hats off to you for saying that in a somewhat public forum.
Well, so once I left Mr. Gibson's, once Mr. Gibson passed away, we did grappling up there, and it was never really my forte. It was never really something I was really great at. Fortunately, I had guys like Mark McFan and of course Eric Paulson, who were guiding me along that and kind of helping me. But it never was really my thing. And then I came down here to Texas after Mr. Gibson passed, and of course I needed a job, so I got a job as a bouncer at this local nightclub. And on a good Saturday night, there'd be 3,000 people in this club. It was the biggest thing, unless you went to Dallas. And even then, a single club might not be any bigger. Yeah. So because we're kind of isolated in this part of Texas, so I got to fight, PBR rodeo clowns when they were in town, and local gangbangers trying to sell drugs in the bathrooms, and fighting over turf inside my bar, and good old boys and their brothers and cousins, who wanted to take off their cowboy belts and hit me with a big old belt buckle and throw chairs and beer bottles. So it didn't take long to kind of reaffirm that grappling in that environment was not really very good. And so when I kind of looked at what I felt like was the real combative matrix for reality, the idea of voluntarily going to the ground wasn't really something that I wanted to do. Now, don't get me wrong. I still believe everyone should have the fundamentals. Yeah. I really break things, fighting and breaking, into pretty simple things.
Yeah.
Hit people hard and don't get hit hard.
Okay.
So, yeah, it's not that you're not going to get hit. Just don't get hit hard where it stuns you into inactivity or breaks you. And then second is control people and don't get controlled. Right? Well, that includes grappling, clinching, standing up on the ground, up against walls, over cars, over counters, on the ground. You have to be able to control another human being and not get controlled. Mm-hmm. And then lastly, if we're talking about the reality of conflict in the world today, you need to be able to transition to a better position and a better weapon as soon as possible if you want to survive.
Yeah.
And so bouncing for a few years kind of reaffirmed all that. And so I still think that guys need to be able to escape from the mount and that sort of stuff, because you get some big redneck sitting on your chest pounding you with that giant hand he's been hauling hay with for years. That's a problem, you know. So everybody needs to be able to handle it to some degree.
So you said after Sifu Terry passed away, you went to Texas and you needed a job. Didn't you move to Texas to open up a school?
I did. There was an interim there where, you know, losing Terry was like losing my hero, right? So he was everything that I had wanted to be. He had a beautiful home, a very successful school, financially stable, had all the right credentials, all the right information, beautiful, loving wife, had the big fuzzy dog, you know, had the relationships with the people and the arts that I wanted.
Yeah.
And so to watch him pass away was a big blow. And so I really needed time to take over. So I actually moved to Florida for a summer and spent time with my pastor in Sarasota, Florida.
Okay.
This was before Levon was there.
Yeah, you know, I think I remember that.
Yeah.
I remember it, yeah.
And so I spent some time in Florida and money. What little savings I had, I blew just laying on the beach in Florida, kind of.
Hey, if you're gonna do that, this is the place to do it.
Yeah, it sure is. It is. And so when I moved back to Wichita Falls, or up to Wichita Falls, Texas, which a friend of mine said, hey, you need to get back in the world. You need to get back to being who you are. So I moved to Wichita Falls with the idea of that, well, at least in the central part of the United States, I kind of have some reputation. Some people know who I am because of Gibson's. And so and I had friends there, but I really didn't want to move back to Tulsa because, you know, every restaurant was a memory, every, you know, thing. So it was a little painful. Mm-hmm. And so I moved to Wichita Falls, which was halfway between Oklahoma City and Dallas. And had no money, so I had to kind of start things, you know. So I had to, you know, get a job.
Yeah. So then tell me a little bit about the transition from doing the security work to opening up a school. So
I was bouncing at the bar.
Yeah.
During the day, I worked in a grocery store selling meat. And I was the guy who cooked the chicken and then put it on the toothpicks and handed it out in samples.
Okay.
So I did that. That job could only give me 20 hours a week. So, and the bouncing job gave me 20 hours a week, but none of them paid well. So I got another job that I would do after I got off at the bar at 3:34 in the morning. I would go to a local car dealership and I would clean the car dealership and sweep the floors, wash the windows, take out the trash. And
I hate to interrupt you, but see, that's what is, again, I'll use the adjective. That's what's so fascinating to me about the lives of my Jeet Kune Do colleagues, right? Okay, so it
wasn't very fascinating at the time, Sifu.
No, hey. Okay, right. Well, what's fascinating is what comes out at the other end.
Yeah.
You see, of that. Let's use the word struggle, right?
Sure.
So okay, so let me jump ahead for a second, because I try to keep these dialogues chronological,
Sure.
you know, but that's not my nature. My nature is to jump all around. I
Right.
wonder who I got that from.
Yeah, really. I think we're all like that. We all adopted that.
All right. So give us a tip for developing persistence, because obviously you had to develop that.
I did. I really felt like no matter what else I was doing, and everything else I did very well. I mean, I've never had a job where I didn't get promoted to manager or, you know, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Never been fired. Whatever I've done well, but I always felt like it wasn't really my calling. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Like I really felt like I was put on this earth to teach martial arts. And I've been doing it since I was 16. So I felt like I would do that, but every hour I did it felt agonizing. You know, like I am not doing what I'm supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
And so having a real strong self-identity and like, this is who I am,
Mm-hmm.
I think kept me driving even when things were hard. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. See, that's interesting, because what you're talking about there is, you know, everybody knows about Bruce Lee's definite chief aim.
Yes, yes.
Right? You're talking about the same thing right there.
Yes.
Knowing what your purpose is.
Right.
So no wonder you're successful as a martial art instructor, because you have that as a driving force.
Right, right.
You have that in your background. And so now you're able to pass that on to others.
Right.
You know, see, so here, that's why people like you are living examples of the success recipe.
Yes, yes.
But I think that sometimes in martial art, we're not given the credit, right? You know, right? It's like there's a saying that, you know, martial art instructors have to be psychologists, you know, maybe even sometimes psychiatrists.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Right? There are all these hats, right? But I gotta ask you something. So you were born in Arkansas. You were born and grew up in Arkansas.
That's correct.
Okay. Then you moved to Oklahoma.
Yes.
And then you moved to Texas.
Yes.
Okay. Culturally, more similarities than differences, or more differences than similarities?
More similarities. You know, my school that I run and the way I run it here would
Mm-hmm.
not work in many other parts of the world.
Why not?
Well, my upbringing, my belief system, that struggle and strife and difficulty are important aspects of life, and so it's okay that your kid is getting punched in the face. It's okay that your kid lost today,
Yeah.
or your kid did something wrong, and so I made him do squats until he was crying, right? And then I made him apologize and do all this stuff. So Texas gets that, right?
Yes.
So
Yes.
you know, it's in their ethos, it's in their belief system that this is what a man is supposed to be. This is what a responsible person is supposed to be.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, we had a kid not long ago. It was awesome. We're running a summer camp right now. So we run a summer camp in the morning from 7:30 in the morning to 5 in the afternoon.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have 110 kids in that summer camp.
Okay.
And so invariably there's going to be issues. And so a couple of kids got in a little argument and one punched the other kid. And so the parents come in and the dad comes in and my wife goes, "Hey, there was a little problem. The other kid didn't handle it very well and he punched your son in the face. I just wanted to let you know." And the dad goes, "Well, that's kind of why I'm bringing him here." So I was like, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, you know, that I'm in the right place when they
Right.
believe with me that those things are requirements and necessary. So
You said there's 100 kids at summer camp.
correct. Yeah.
Is that representative of 1/3 of Warriors Way's enrollment, kids enrollment?
Yeah, I'd say it's probably, we have 400 total I think 400, it fluctuates a little over 400. And so we run somewhere between overall, around 450, 460 when we had their adults, our tiny little adult program.
Yeah.
But and then 110 of those guys will be in summer camp, and then after summer camp, they'll roll right into our after-school program, where we will pick them up from schools, and then they'll come and do martial arts after school, and then their parents pick them up at 5 o'clock. So
okay, all right. So then the citizenry at Warriors Way is mostly juniors, and
yes.
then you have the strong adult program.
Yes.
Okay. So how did you not even rationalize, but there's been talk out there for decades that Jeet Kune Do is not for kids.
Of course, yeah.
So you're gonna get some grief when you say, well, I got a successful school and we got like 300 kids. It'd be like, well, you're not a real Jeet Kune Do school.
Sure. Of course. Everybody who's not making money says that.
Right. Yeah.
What I'll say is, at the end of it, you have your black belts, right? Your junior black belts. And so you have kids come up and they're 12 years old and they get a junior black belt program. Now, how do I justify that? Well, my kids program is a grade school program, right? And so they can graduate from grade school and go into the teens program, which would be the junior high program. Then graduate that and go to the adult program, which would be the college program, right? So, and the curriculums reflect that. You can't expect to teach college level algebra to grade school kids. So the way I look at it is, if you're teaching a kids program, if you have adults in the same class you have your kids, which I don't know that many people do these days, but if you do that, you're either asking the kids to learn adult material or the adults to learn kid material.
Yes.
So I have a kids program, and they do progressive indirect attack entries into trapping, into attack by combinations, into joint locks and throws. They stick spar. They do projectiles. Now they stick spar with soft sticks, obviously.
Yeah.
But they kickbox, and every single one of them, when they test for their little junior black belt, I personally spar every single kid, and they do 3 rounds. I'm the last round, and I'm the hardest. So every one of them, I knock the breath out of them. I kick them in the leg until they can't stand up. They've already done a 3-mile run, a 70-question terminology question.
Mm-hmm.
They have to translate 70 JKD terms into English.
Mm-hmm.
They have to do 50 push-ups, 50 leg lifts, 500 punches, 250 kicks, and demonstrate all the material, all the Lloyd Doss series, straight blast drills, all that.
Yeah.
And then at the end, they spar, and I push them to the point where their body's given up, their hands are so tired they can't hold them up, they can't breathe, tears are pouring out of their face, and I'm punching them. And when they grit their teeth and punch me back in the face as hard as they can over and over, that's what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
When their heart won't let them quit, and even though their body is not able to keep up.
Yeah.
And so when people watch that and people see that, I'd be like, yeah, tell me that kid doesn't deserve that, right? Tell me that's not JKD.
Well, okay. Now tell me that you have written a book about this.
Who's got time to sit down and write, man? I can barely remember to take a photo and put on Facebook or Instagram. Whole events, 3-day events go by, and I'm like, I didn't even take a picture. I didn't even put that on Facebook. Nothing.
All right, then you need an assistant. You need somebody to remind you. Everything that you just said there, right? In my opinion, what written out would rank with all of the self-development and self-improvement books and materials that we have out there. And that's what I was referring to earlier about the role of an excellent martial art instructor.
Right.
It's all these things rolled into one. SIOC.
Yep.
So where, how, and when did that come about?
I was attending a Dan Inosanto seminar, and we were doing some knife work, and I was asking some questions about it. And he said, really, if you want to get good at the blade work, you should go study with Chris Ioch. And I was like, who's that? I mean, I kind of missed the era when Chris Ioch was on the East Coast and kind of doing some stuff, So I didn't know who he was. And he said, yeah, on a scale from 1 to 10, I think his system is a 10. And I was like, whoa, that's crazy, right? So I said, well, what do you think our system would be? He goes, maybe 7, maybe an 8. And I couldn't believe that. I'm like, I've never seen anything better, right? How could there be something better? And I was asking him, what do they do? And he's like anything else, when you have specialists that concentrate on a particular thing, they just do more stuff and they do it more in depth. And so he gave me his number. Wow. And yeah, so I was like, okay. I mean, just like everything else, Guru Dan says, go train with Master Chai. Okay, you go train with Master Chai. Go train with Herman Sawanda. Okay, you go train with Herman Sawanda. Right. So he said, go train with Chris Ioch. So I was like, okay, I'm going to go train with Chris Ioch. Yeah. And really, I thought it would kind of be like that. I thought I'll go learn some new things from another teacher and, add it to my curriculum, that sort of stuff. But it turned out to be, far more than that for me personally.
Yeah.
So I called him and said, I'd like to train with you. And he said, okay. Let me call you back. And then he called Guru and vetted me, to make sure, and then called me back and says, okay, when do you want me to come down? And now keep in mind, at the time, my wife and I had, I don't know, not many students. My wife and I lived in the school in the storeroom. So a tiny room, we lived in that room for a year and a half, me, her, and our Great Dane, because we couldn't afford rent in an apartment and rent at our school.
Okay.
So we moved into the commercial school and lived in a little storeroom. So we had no money and we're just barely getting it going.
Yeah.
And but at least it was supporting us, her and I, Yeah. And he said, don't worry about it. I'll get as many people there as you can. I'll just take whatever we make at the door, and we'll get your training started. And so he came down, and it blew me away. I'd never seen or felt that level of skill from anyone. And that night, my wife's laying there and she's like, they kind of scare me. And I'm like, yeah, me too. I said, but he could literally do anything he wanted to me. He could cut me at will. I mean, I was doing it was embarrassing actually, because I had gotten all my friends and peers to be at this seminar. Mm-hmm. And here this guy is just treating me like I'm a little kid, just can touch me, slap me, cut me, juggle knives, crack jokes, sheath knives, resheath knives, switch hands, throw them over my shoulder and catch them with the other hand. Just ridiculous amount of skill. And so at the end of the day, that night I was laying in bed with my wife, and I'm like, first off, I never want that to happen, anybody to ever be able to do that to me again.
Right. Yeah.
And I want to be able to do it to other people.
Yeah.
So that kind of started my Ioch journey, which has been exciting,
Well, that's another admirable thing about you, because a lot of people would have gone through that and never gone back.
Sure. Yeah.
Right. Because they don't want to deal with that type of embarrassment, let's call it. Right. Okay. Did that lead to Headhunter blades?
Yes. So I started training in Ioch, and then with pretty early, we were having public events, or not even really public events, private Ioch events, our Sama, our gathering where we all get together. And so Tom Kyer started bringing in as I guess guest students to attend some military guys. And so I think that it's pretty safe to say that that those guys were military special forces. They came in, started training with us. We all kind of clicked, and then we started Ioch Tactical Group, or Tuhon Tom and the Ioch instructor started Ioch Tactical Group. I was very fortunate to be in on that ground level. Mm-hmm. And so we started doing military contracts, and to which we still do today. And so, in fact, we've been it's a full-time gig for Tuhon Tom, a lot of our guys. I did it full-time. I was embedded on a team for about a year and a half. I was away from my wife and my school, and my wife ran everything, ran the whole empire, and and I went and played with the boys. So so it was great for me. It's great for it, and tremendously influenced my martial arts training and what I do as a person and how I teach and train now.
Yeah.
You know, huge influence shift. But Headhunter's Blades was really a result of us training guys in Stock Tactical. And the inevitable question was, okay, well, what should we carry? And so we'd be like, well, you know, you could carry this, but you got to fix this sheath and you got to fix the handle. And so literally we'd teach a military contract, and we'd go in with 25, 30 knives that we made custom sheaths for, that we ground down the handle and cut this and fix that. And
Yeah.
And I was like, man, we could just make whole other knives that are based on our designs where we don't have to fix things.
Yes.
And so I sought out a custom knife maker and began to study under him. And about 3 years later, came out with a product that we were comfortable with. And then it went through its whole testing phase where they all carried it around. We SIOC instructors carried it and tested it and used it, got feedback and changes, and then eventually kind of expanded from there. So Headhunter Blades is the result of us trying to fill that need for those kind of guys. And then eventually my martial arts friends and martial arts students wanted them. And, you know, as we got some extra, we, you know, started selling to them and just kind of kept on going.
Okay, so that clarifies it for me. You are the actual bladesmith.
Yes, yes. So there was an interim in time where we had a need and not a bladesmith. And so we sought out a guy named Daniel Winkler. Daniel Winkler's famous for making the knives and the tomahawks for the movie The Last of the Mohicans.
Okay.
World-class bladesmith, amazing guy.
Yeah.
And so he kind of made blades for us until myself and a guy named Tuhon got up to speed. And so, you know, we needed to hone the actual mechanics of making knives. Mm-hmm. Now, we know what feels right, and we know what the designs are from all the years of training and application, but, you know, I needed to know how this grinder makes this grind, and how do you attach these handles, and which steel is best, and all that stuff. And so now we all work together. Myself, Tuhon Carl, and Daniel Winkler, we all work together to produce the blades for SIOC Collie and Achinza Collie.
Yeah. Okay. When I was doing the research to talk to you, it dawned on me that warriors. Huh?
You did research? That's so
okay.
You're such a professional.
All right. It dawned on me, warrior's way is another way of saying the way of the warrior.
Yes.
I'm wondering if that's a 1982 BBC documentary.
Yes, yes.
Is there a connection there? Did that play a role in naming your school?
No, not really. But, you know, I've kind of always had the idea that martial arts really is based in war, right? So that's where I get the phrase martial comes before art, right? Yes. I use that a lot, right? So you can be artistic as you want. If those guys want your stuff, they just come over and stomp a mud hole in you and take your shit. So so you have to be able to defend yourself, right? Martial has to be the primary element to be able to survive. Then once a culture and a people and a tribe and a family have stability and security, then they have the freedom of self-expression through artistic means. Mm-hmm. So I really am a big believer that you need to be able to, that still needs to be a part of what we're teaching. If not, and I know a lot of people do say that they are, but we know for a fact that they have a hard time with that when it translates to real confrontation. Yeah. In the classroom, putting on gloves and going at it, they do okay. But when we get to the street, sometimes there's a huge void there. And so I think that it's very common in the martial arts to build a false sense of confidence in students, you know, and they go, I think I can handle it. And then they get out there and they get their butt handed to them, and they don't really understand why. Yeah. And so I think that martial comes before art, you know. Yeah.
So what would be one of the bridges in the approach that you use that would connect that real world situation to what you're doing in class?
Yeah. So So I still want to have the high level of martial arts capability, because I still think that those drills and all the stuff that Guru Asano is teaching, I think that's all incredibly relevant. You know, I'm not so nearsighted to believe that a drill is supposed to be combative application. You know, we all know that there's certain things that you're like, yeah, no, I would never fight like that. That's just builds an attribute in me to be able to fight, right? So if you can get your head around that and get rid of the silliness that people argue about, then we can still see that there's validity in the whole curriculum. And then my training with SIOC and training, you know, as a contractor with military, if I look at those sort of things, there are factors that in real fights that martial arts do not address. So one is unequal initiative. It's as simple as that. We take the SIOC Kali principle of unequal initiative, right? If we said, okay, we're going to spar, me and you are going to spar, and you go over and you unzip your gear bag and you get your boxing gloves out and you're lacing up and you put your mouthpiece in, and I hit you in the back of the head right there and start elbowing you and throw you to the ground and jump, I win that sparring match. Well, an enormous amount of street fights start exactly like that. Right? In fact, the guy doesn't even realize, one guy doesn't realize he's in a fight yet. The other guy already knows. He's just waiting for the right angle and the right time. So this guy's waiting for somebody to say go. This guy already said go in his head. He's just trying to get the right distance and the right place, right? But nobody practices that in the martial arts school, because that's unfair. That's unsportsmanlike. That's, you know, but no, you wait till the bell rings. You wait till the instructor says go. And so how do martial arts train that? How do they train unequal initiative, right? Do they even realize that's an issue, right? And then force multipliers. We're talking about the reality of the world. It's great to be bigger and stronger and faster and, you know, have, you know, violence of action and all that stuff that people like those phrases people like to throw around. But the reality is that I'm one rolled ankle from losing an enormous amount of attributes, right? I'm one bad Mexican meal from losing an amount of attributes, right? So, you know, I've been in fights where I had a guy in plum and I'm about to knee him into oblivion, and somebody else tackles both of us, and the very first thing hits the ground, the concrete that we're on, is my elbow, right? And so now my left arm is shot, right? So now I'm fighting one-handed. I'm in pain. I'm mentally distracted. So, you know, a ton of fights, people get their pinky broken, their thumb jammed right off the bat. Sometimes you know you're in a fight because you got bang, and you're like, oh, and now you know, oh, that's the go bell, right? And so, but now I'm mentally and physically a little bit down. So when we look at our attributes, yes, we absolutely want to be as healthy as we can for longevity, which, you know, using Guru Dan is a perfect example of that. You know, we want to be as healthy as we can so we can live long, happy lives and be fruitful and productive for our families and loved ones. And so we increase our quality of life. And we want to also be the biggest, strongest, meanest beast on the battlefield, right? So, but it doesn't take much. You know, you fight one or two guys and now you're so winded, right? You spent your adrenaline, if you got an adrenaline dump, you spent your adrenaline and now you're in parasympathetic backlash. You can barely stand up. And you still have two more guys you got to deal with, right? So, so I believe that weapons and the transition to weapons is a real critical thing when it comes to the reality of violence in today's world.
So I'm gonna tell you my story, because all three elements are combined: unequal initiative, force multiplier, and parasympathetic backlash. I was in New York at a new breed seminar with Asano, and he calls me up to demonstrate with Nick Sakulas.
Yes.
So we're doing double stick, right?
Right.
All of a sudden, out of nowhere, Nick goes into a second gear. Right? And I'm like, holy crap, he's going to kill me. All right. I mean, I go, oh man, so this is what the kids are capable of. So it really changed my mindset, right? It was force multiply, because he just wailed.
Yes.
Right? And it was unequal initiative.
Right. He got that next gear faster than you did.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
So that, that little experience with Nick made me a believer in everything that the Sayoc tribe puts out there.
Yeah, yeah. Nick will love it that you called him one of the kids, by the way.
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, because, because there's us guys who came in the early to mid 80s.
Yes, yes.
And then there are the guys who came about like in the mid 90s, like a decade after we did. What I love about them is that when it came to the idea or the prospect of teaching martial art professionally, they're fearless.
Yeah.
It did not go through the I don't know if this happened to you, but I went through the phase where whatever it is that the Taekwondo schools are doing, you don't want to do that.
Sure, sure.
And I swallowed that hook, line, and sinker.
Right.
Until the day I saw the Taekwondo guy with his brand new Mercedes.
Right.
And I had the rusted Honda Accord, and I thought, something's not right.
Right. Something's not right with this picture.
Yeah.
And if you will, we go back to Sayoc. Tuhon Sayoc was the same thing. He was like, hey, you should just go open a Taekwondo school, hire a Taekwondo guy, have him teach on the other side of town, and be your competition. And really, you own both schools. And
yeah.
It's like, wow, that's the way to do it. But
yeah, I mean, because you know what I found out when I was still running my school, I found out that Staples, the office supply company, they opened up their own competition. Quill is a Staples company.
Yeah.
But they're promoted as being competition for them,
Sure. Yeah.
So okay, well, listen, I don't want to take up too much more of your time. This was even more fun than I thought it would be.
You thought it was very boring?
No, I didn't. No, I said it was more fun, right? No, I didn't. I mean, it's, you and we haven't spoken in a while. I haven't seen you in a while. And, sometimes I'm not sure, but you know what it's like? It's like when I go up to Baltimore, if I haven't seen my family in a month, right? In 3 months, you're right there immediately. Right. And I find that with most people in the JKD clan, it's that way. We may not have seen each other. And so that's one of the reasons why I want to keep doing this program.
Yes.
Because, all you guys out there, you're my heroes, you're my role models. Even if I'm senior or junior to you or whatever, I think that, yes, on the physical level, we can all learn from each other. But I think that mentally and emotionally and even professionally, there's even more for us to learn from each other. And so, I kind of consider it and I have fun talking with you guys. So then I thought, well, why be selfish? Why don't I just put it in a public forum?
Right, sure.
Everybody can see the greatness that we have in the Jeet Kune Do clan. And you, my friend, are a perfect example of that Jeet Kune Do greatness. So I want to thank you for taking the time out on this Friday evening.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I felt very honored when you asked me to be on your show. So I was like, wow, of course. Yeah, of course I'd be happy to be on your show. Yeah.
Well, I appreciate it. All right.
Well,
okay. And we'll do it again. This is just part one.
Okay. All right. I'll hold you to that.
All right, Harley, take care. Have a good one.
Take care, sir. Thank you. Have a great weekend. Thanks again for everything.
Bye.